My name is Elena Ghost Rodriguez, and I never expected my morning flight over the California vineyards would end with me teaching the Air Force a lesson they'd never forget. The pre-dawn mist was just lifting from the Napa Valley when I started. Up Mariposa, my modified 1952 Cessna 170. She wasn't the prettiest bird in the sky. Her blue and white paint was faded, her fabric wings patched in 3 places, and her engine had more personality than most people I knew. But after 12 years of aerial application work, she was as much a part of me as my own heartbeat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'm 34, 5'4", with calloused hands and sun-streaked brown hair that I keep braided back for flying. Most people see a small-town crop duster pilot trying to make ends meet, spraying fertilizer and pesticides over California's wine country. They're not entirely wrong, but they're missing a few crucial details. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I'd loaded Mariposa with organic fertilizer for the Castellano vineyard, checked the weather, clear skies, minimal wind, and was preparing for my first pass when my radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice. Unidentified aircraft, this is Viper. Flight leader, you are approaching restricted airspace. Alter your course immediately. I looked up from my instrument panel to see 2 dark shapes descending rapidly from the east. F-22 Raptors, their angular silhouettes unmistakable even at distance. My stomach dropped. Fighter jets meant serious business, and I was just trying to help some grapes grow. Viper flight leader, this is November 87 Charlie Echo. I'm conducting agricultural operations over the Castellano vineyard. I've been flying this route for 3 years. There's no restricted airspace here. The lead pilot's voice came back sharp and authoritative. Charlie Echo, you need to vacate this area immediately. This airspace has been temporarily restricted for national security purposes. Through my windscreen, I could see them now, 2 killing machines worth more than the entire annual GDP of some small countries. They moved with predatory grace, positioning themselves to bracket my flight path. But as I banked toward what I thought was clear airspace, something caught my eye that made my blood run cold. Hidden in a grove of oak trees about 2 miles north were several vehicles that definitely didn't belong in wine country. Black SUVs, a communications truck, and what looked like a mobile command center. That's when 15 years of training I'd tried to leave behind came flooding back. See, what the folks in Napa didn't know about their friendly neighborhood crop duster was that before I started flying low over vineyards, I'd been flying considerably lower over much more dangerous terrain. Captain Elena Rodriguez, 1st Special Operations Wing, flying a C-130, gunships on missions that officially never happened. I'd been one of only 12 women ever qualified to pilot the Angel of Death, a flying weapons platform that provided close air support to special operations forces worldwide. For 8 years, I'd flown night missions in places where even the darkness had teeth, supporting operations that kept America safe while the rest of the country slept peacefully. But that was before Afghanistan, before the mission that went sideways, before I decided some secrets were too heavy to carry in the cockpit anymore. Charlie Echo, acknowledge your intentions, the F-22 pilot demanded. I keyed my mic while my eyes swept the ground operation below. My years of tactical intelligence training kicked in automatically, reading the situation like a map I'd memorized long ago. Viper flight leader, I'm experiencing engine trouble. Need to find a safe landing area. It wasn't entirely a lie. Mariposa's engine had been running rough lately and at 200 feet above ground. Any mechanical issue was potentially fatal. But more importantly, something was very wrong with the picture below. The vehicles were positioned around what I now recognized as an old wine cave entrance, one of those underground storage facilities that dotted Napa Valley. But this one had been sealed years ago after a collapse. Why would federal agents be interested in an abandoned wine cave? That's when I saw them. 3 additional vehicles approaching from the south, moving fast on the back roads that wound through the vineyard. These weren't government plates. These were the kind of nondescript panel vans that set off every alarm bell in my special operations brain. Viper Flight Leader, you've got company coming up from the south. 3 vehicles moving fast toward your ground team's position. The radio went silent for several long seconds. When the voice came back, it belonged to someone else older. Female, with the kind of authority that came from years of making life and death decisions. November-8-7-Charlie-Echo. This is Colonel Patricia Hayes. What exactly are you seeing down there? I described the approaching vehicles, their tactical positioning, and the fact that they were using back roads to avoid the main highway. Checkpoints. My years of mission planning had taught me to recognize and coordinated assault when I saw one developing. Colonel Hayes, I radioed. Captain Elena Rodriguez, 1st Special Operations Wing, retired. Whatever operation you're running down there is about to be compromised. Another pause, longer this time. I could practically hear the furious consultations happening in the command center below. Rodriguez, authenticate your service record. A C-130OH. Spectre gunship pilot, 2009 to 2017. Calcine Ghost, 96 combat missions, mostly classified. Colonel James Mitchell was my commanding officer until I transferred out. Elena? The colonel's voice carried a note of recognition. Jim Mitchell's ghost? The pilot who could put a 105mm round through a window at 2 miles. That's me, ma'am. And right now, you've got 3 vehicles full of hostiles about to crash your party. My guess is they know exactly what you're protecting in that wine cave. The next few minutes would later be classified so deeply that even the participants couldn't discuss them with their own families. The abandoned wine cave, it turned out, had been secretly repurposed by the Department of Energy as a temporary storage facility for recovered nuclear materials from a decommissioned research reactor. Today's operation was supposed to be a quiet transfer to a more secure location, but someone with inside knowledge had tipped off a group with very bad intentions. Ghost, the ground team is in position, but those F-22s can't provide close support in a populated area, Colonel Hayes radioed. You mentioned engine trouble. How's your maneuvering capability? I looked down at Mariposa's load of organic fertilizer and made a tactical assessment that would have made my oldest C-130 crew proud. Colonel, I've got 200 gallons of liquid organic fertilizer on board. It's not toxic, but it's thick, slippery, and absolutely disgusting. If your people can create some separation, I might be able to blind those incoming hostiles long enough for your team to gain tactical advantage. Rodriguez, you're talking about using agricultural chemicals as an improvised area denial weapon. Ma'am, I'm talking about turning bad guys into very smelly, very slippery bad guys who can't see, can't stand up, and really wish they'd chosen a different career path. The pause was shorter this time. Colonel Hayes had learned to trust her instincts about unconventional solutions. Do it, Ghost. Light them up. What happened next was probably the only time in military history that a crop duster provided close air support to a federal operation while F-22 Raptors flew top cover. I dove Mariposa toward the approaching vehicles, coming in fast and low, the kind of attack run I'd practiced 10,000 times, just with fertilizer instead of 40mm cannons. The lead van never saw me coming until their windshield was suddenly coated with 50 gallons of organic sludge. The driver hit the brakes, skidded sideways, and crashed into an irrigation ditch. The second vehicle, blinded by the spray and trying to avoid the first crash, slammed into a concrete vineyard post. The third van managed to stop, but not before its occupants were stumbling out, gagging and slipping in the organic mess I'd laid down. The federal response team moved in with textbook precision. apprehending 12 armed individuals who turned out to be part of an international smuggling ring targeting nuclear materials. 6 hours later, I found myself in a secure debriefing room at Travis Air Force Base, facing a panel of colonels, FBI agents, and people whose agencies were identified only by initials. Colonel Hayes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd clearly seen her share of unconventional operations, asked the question everyone was thinking. Elena, in 12 years of crop dusting, did you ever suspect that Wine Cave was anything other than abandoned storage? I thought about it for a moment. Ma'am, in wine country, when someone seals up a perfectly good cave and posts condemned signs, that usually means it's either full of something valuable or something dangerous. Either way, it's worth watching. The lead FBI agent leaned forward. Your tactical assessment was textbook special operations. How did you maintain those skills as a civilian pilot? I smiled, thinking of the long hours I spent practicing precision, flying through the narrow canyons and valleys of Northern California. Sir, have you ever tried to spray a vineyard row that's exactly 12 feet wide while flying at 150 miles per hour in gusty crosswinds? It keeps your reflexes sharp. The Air Force colonel who'd been quietly taking notes looked up. The F-22 pilots filed a report saying your flying was unlike anything they'd encountered. Quote, like watching someone turn physics into poetry. Ma'am, when you've spent years putting ordnance on target from a platform the size of a city bus, flying a little Cessna feels like dancing. 3 weeks later, I received a call from a woman who identified herself only as Director Chun from an agency I'd never heard of. Apparently, there was a growing need for pilots who could operate below the institutional radar while maintaining plausible civilian cover. I listened politely to her offer of a consulting contract that would have tripled my income and put me back in the shadow world I'd worked so hard to leave behind. Thank you, but no, I told her. I've got grapes to take care of. But I kept her business card. Just in case, 6 months later, Mariposa and I were back to our regular routine of aerial application across Northern California's wine country. The Castellano vineyard produced their best harvest in a decade, though Roberto Castellano mentioned that his property had been mysteriously selected for a federal agricultural excellence program that came with significant tax benefits. The F-22 pilots Major Sarah Kim and Captain David Chun stopped by the local airfield a few weeks after the incident. Out of uniform, they looked like any other young professionals visiting wine country. But they sought me out, wanted to buy me dinner and hear stories about flying gunships. Ma'am, Major Kim said over a glass of Castellano's finest Cabernet, we've been flying fighters for 8 years combined, and what you did that day redefined our understanding of tactical aviation. The way you used terrain masking, timing, and precision delivery, it was like watching a master class. Captain Chun nodded enthusiastically. The instructor pilots at Nellis are using your engagement as a case study in adaptive tactics. They're calling it the Ghost Protocol. I laughed, swirling the wine in my glass. Kids, that wasn't a protocol. That was just an old crop duster who remembered that sometimes the best weapon is the one nobody expects. But privately, I felt something I hadn't experienced since leaving the military: pride in a job well done. Not just the tactical success, but the fact that when it mattered, all those years of training came back like muscle memory. As I write this, sitting in my hangar while Mariposa gets her weekly maintenance, I think about the assumptions people make based on what they choose to see. The F-22 pilots saw a civilian obstruction to their airspace. The federal agents saw a complication to their operation. The smugglers saw nothing at all until it was too late. But Colonel Hayes, who'd learned to look beyond the surface, saw potential where others saw problems. She trusted a voice on the radio claiming military credentials, and that trust saved an operation that could have had international consequences. These days, when I'm spraying vineyards across California's wine country, I occasionally spot military aircraft passing overhead. Sometimes they'll break radio protocol just long enough to say, "Good morning, Charlie Echo. Keep dancing up there." And sometimes, when the light is just right and Mariposa's engine is purring like a contented cat, I'll pull her through a victory roll just to remind myself that some skills never fade. They just wait for the right moment to matter again. The truth is, America's full of women with hidden chapters in their stories. The quiet librarian helping kids with homework might be a former Air Force intelligence officer. The yoga instructor teaching morning classes could be a retired Navy pilot. The crop duster spraying fertilizer over California vineyards might be the same woman who flew gunship missions in the world's most dangerous places. We transition to civilian life, find new purposes, build new identities. But when the moment comes when training and experience and sheer stubborn determination are what stand between chaos and security, we remember who we used to be and become exactly who we need to be. That's what happened the day F-22s found my crop duster in their airspace. They expected to move a civilian obstacle out of their way. Instead, they found an ally who'd been hiding in plain sight, flying low and precise over the rolling hills of wine country, keeping her skills sharp while helping grapes grow. Sometimes, the most important battles are fought not by the people you expect, but by the people who've been quietly preparing their whole lives for the moment, when ordinary circumstances require extraordinary responses. And sometimes, the person you least expect to save the day is a woman in a beat-up crop duster who learned long ago that precision and timing matter more than size and speed. That's the real story of what happened when F-22s found Elena "Ghost" Rodriguez in their airspace. It wasn't about the planes or the weapons or the classified operations. It was about the fact that in America, you never know who might be ready to step up when their country needs them, even if they're just trying to make an honest living helping vineyards flourish in the California sunshine. The end.